What happened?
Fisher beat the crap out of her.
What?
I'm all right. I don't want anybody to know about it.
Hey, Rosie.
Took my first
Man?
where the muddy
Can we come in?
grasses
Well, that depends on what you're here for.
Let him in, honey.
Mexico, the skyline.
Mr. Connor, we have a warrant for your arrest. There's been an assault and battery complaint filed on you.
Yeah, I heard the call come in on the radio, so I just told dispatch
Where
that
the
we took it.
working man does his
Sorry,
best
Rosie.
to provide.
You can't arrest Dan. He didn't do anything wrong. Jackie came over here.
Roseanne, this is about me.
Giving a
Not about anybody else. Let's leave it at that.
Day, making overtime to keep the wolves away.
All right. Welcome again to Social Distillation, the summary still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, as the clip suggests, we're talking masculinity again, and part of it is the difference between what we got as kids, which if you are just listening, you heard everything, but it said over the top 90s TV dads were built different, which they were. There is a different perspective we get from media and culture. So the difference between those, how it affects young boys and how it affects men. So if you have a young boy, this episode will be helpful, or if you are a young man struggling, this episode would be helpful. So
Yeah, I was thinking about that when we were getting ready, because I didn't watch a lot of Roseanne, but one of the first things that popped into my head that I did watch where the dad was very similar, because again, different expressions of masculinity is something we've been talking about when we talk about masculinity. I try to talk about it, especially after last week and the really toxic, bizarre looks maxing thing, which is rightfully called toxic because it is taking an aspect of masculinity and warping it beyond recognition. So you have someone like John Goodman playing the dad on Roseanne, overweight guy, kind of buffoonish, but he was never a moron. He was never treated as a moron, right? From what I watched. And another example would be, if you didn't watch Roseanne, Family Matters. And the dad on Family Matters, who I just brain farted on the actor's name. He's the he plays the cop in Die Hard, and then he plays the cop on Family Matters.
I'm wanting to say Winston something. It starts with a W.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, he was a very similar character.
Or Uncle Phil from
Uncle Phil is
from Fresh
another
Prince.
one.
Yeah.
Where it's a sitcom, it's a comedy, so they would play things for laughs, and sometimes they were the butt of the joke, but most of the time you were laughing with them, not at them, and other people were also the butts of the joke, right?
Well, the joke was the situation. The joke wasn't them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there were several times in, you brought up Fresh Prince. I can remember a couple of times there where Uncle Phil got real serious, and went into serious dad mode. The dad on Family Matters did it several times where, okay, it's no more joking time, it's dad time. And that's what this opening here that we played, this clip from Roseanne, is. This is why stories are so important, because I brought up that clip from that quote from C.S. Lewis, that long paragraph from Mere Christianity, where he talks about humility, and I tried to explain it. And yet that clip right there illustrates it so much better than any words I could come up with. Because what does he do when he hears that his sister-in-law just got the crap beat out of her? He doesn't say anything. He doesn't really even, there's no time to even think there. He just acts. And then when it comes time to face the consequences, it's no. Connect the scenes there. The wifely motherly instinct is to help protect her husband. She's trying to explain to the cops what happened, but no, Jackie said she didn't want anyone to know, which is a very sadly normal female response to abuse. Is, I just don't want anyone to know because of, as you've talked about, reputational damage. That's what they're concerned about. All right, well, you don't want anyone to know, fine, but there's a price that he needs to pay to know no, you don't do this. And if I have to pay a price for that too, all right, holds his hands out, cuff me, take me
Yeah.
in. I did what I had to do. You do what you got to do.
And this kind of touches on something I mention a lot in our conversation is the duality of what it is to be masculine or feminine, or even to have personality traits. As we talked a few episodes ago, we went through all the big five personality traits and talked
Mhm.
about the good and the bad. Well, that energy is positive if it's done right, but it's toxic if it becomes abusive. And you want that well, we celebrate the nature of that when it does the right thing, but then we talk about how it's bad when it does the wrong thing. But as Dax says in Real Men, he says you want them to wear their heart on the
Mhm.
sleeve, but get mad when it tears every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's so we gotta walk that line of how much do we want and how do we celebrate it versus how do we punish it,
Mhm.
because you want positive reinforcement for the good behaviors. The problem is when you talk toxic masculinity and you say everything masculine is bad, there's no positive reinforcement, there's only punishment, and now you're
Yeah.
actually punishing for the good sides of that behavior.
Well, and this clip is a great example of that. Of, oh, well, when you're calling all masculinity toxic, you're saying that what what the wife abuser did is equal to what the man did who stepped in to do something about it. Because that on the one hand, that was the toxic masculinity. That was taking the aggression and going too far and using it improperly. And the response was proper masculinity, aggression properly focused for punishment for a bad act.
Hmm.
And
And yeah, go ahead, keep going.
well, I hope we don't get dinged because of the song that was playing there, because whoever made that clip, that was perfect, both in the briefness of the clip, but then also the song they put over it,
Hmm.
which is from the band Uncle Lucius, "Keep the Wolves Away." And I don't know how biographical this song is, but the two stanzas that are great there are, well, it talks about, one of the great lines is, um, I was just going to start from the beginning. Took my first breath where the muddy Brazos spills into the Gulf of Mexico. Hey, we know where that is. Where the skyline's colored by chemical plants that put the bread on the table of the working man. And that's another great connection between the dad on Roseanne, the dad on Family Matters. These were guys that, in Family Matters, he walked a beat. He was a cop, but he wasn't a detective. He walked the beat. And I don't remember what John Goodman's character does, but he's a blue collar guy, you know, uh, that is, much like we've brought up one of our favorites, Al Bundy. You know what? He bitches and moans, but he still goes to work every day.
Hmm.
There are some great clips of great Al Bundy moments of, you know what? Yeah, I work at a crap job, but I work the job.
And I provide
Um,
for my family. That's the other side of it. Yeah.
that's the
Which
second verse
which
where,
it's so ridiculous that the shoe salesman can
mhm,
afford the house they were in, and
yeah, not a different time. It was the 80s, man. It was a different time. At the second stanza of Keep the Wolves Away, where the working man does his best to provide safety and shelter for kids and a wife. You've talked about that ad nauseum. That's the male instinct. That's masculinity. Safety and shelter for kids and a wife. Providing. Giving a little of his soul every day. Making overtime to keep the wolves away.
Mhm.
I love that line. This is why I love music, because you can talk and talk and talk, and yet just in that brief little bit of poetry, this is why men die earlier. One of the big reasons: giving a little of his soul every day, making overtime to keep the wolves away.
Mhm.
And it's not just what you do; it's the wear and tear psychologically on what you worry about that you could have done or you didn't do or you should do. All of that weighs on you.
Yeah.
And then the point of the poignant part of the song is that why we're talking about this is the dad sets the example for the son so that when it comes to the son's time, he can do the same thing. I was barely 13 when the company men tried to dig my daddy's grave. It happened on a French-owned tanker ship, spilling poison in the Galveston Bay. Wait, there's part of Galveston Bay that's not poison? Oh, okay. Uh,
I hope so, because we fish there sometimes, and
I
every
know.
once in a while we catch a fish that we eat.
Every once in a while. Even when we don't, we're wading around in it or getting splashed on kayaks, whatever. Where the liquid fire filled his lungs and his eyes, silenced any mortal cries. Called into the grips of death stinging pain, he fought like hell to keep the wolves away. Um, for the next few years, Dad was sick as a dog, but he made a recovery just despite the odds. The settlement came and we moved out of town where the sky isn't heavy with refinery clouds. Yeah, he's still alive. He's doing good. He's in his 50s, but the money's running out and he's pinching for pennies. So I'm going for broke with every song I play because now it's my turn to keep the wolves away. I love that that's the last line of the song because, again, that's the whole point. That is why you do what you do as a dad so that your kids know what it means to be a dad.
Yeah, and we talk about again, it was a different time. We grew up with different examples, and unfortunately, so many men have failed in the interim. But go to Fresh Prince. One of the best scenes in sitcom history is the one where Will Smith's dad leaves, and again, out of his life, and Will Smith goes through his monologue, which is fantastic, and Uncle Phil just listens. And then when it gets to the crescendo of it, when Smith is why he don't want me, why he don't want me, why he don't want me, and crying, but still trying to act tough, Uncle Phil just pulls him in. Just pulls him in. And that scene not only was just fantastic and heartbreaking, but it shows the difference between good dad, bad dad. He wasn't even Uncle Phil's kid. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I think he was his through marriage even. He wasn't even blood.
I
And
think it was Aunt Viv
mhm.
was his mom's sister.
So not even his own kid, and he's the solid rock that's there supporting and guiding, and also a rock that allowed for that emotional moment while dad just left again.
Yeah, if you haven't watched, if you like long form critique, check out Little Platoon's critique of Stranger Things season 5 because I've only watched the first bit. The second part is out. I haven't watched it yet because it's like 2.5 hours long. But he spends so much of the um first part talking about how um Mr. Wheeler is the true hero of the show, and the writers don't realize it. But you look at him, and he's just, you know what? This is frustrating, and they try and make him out to be the bad guy because he's having that argument with his wife, but he still lets these weirdos stay in his house. He's arguing about it with his wife in private, as you do when you have a disagreement with your wife. You don't want to argue in front of the kids and the neighbors and all that.
Well, Jordan Peterson disagrees with that. He says you should argue in front of your kids to teach them
Well,
how it's done right. But
that's a good point. I would say,
but the neighbors and the rest of something that's going to get out to be the gossip of the town. No, you're absolutely
the
100% correct.
where I would disagree with that, and I wonder what he would say about this is I've always we would argue sometimes in front of the kids, but I always made it a point to bite my tongue if I disagreed with my wife about the kids.
Hmm.
So yeah, you can do this. No, you can't do that, or whatever. And I'm thinking, but not in front of the kids. That mom and dad need to be united about the kids in front of the kids. If there are other things, and that's what their argument was about. And oh no, so he's a bad guy because he wants them out. Well, yeah, he wants his life back. He has busted his butt to make this life to provide for to give shelter and safety to his wife and kids. And now you have all these other people here upending his life. What's going on here? How long is this going to last? But he still does it. Much like we talk about why we love Matt Cawthon as a
Mhm.
character in the Wheel of Time is, yeah, he's going to bitch and moan, but he's still running into the burning building to save the kids.
Hmm. Well, Matt became a dad in that series, even though he never officially did, when he took on the army.
Mm,
They were incompetent when he came in.
that's a good point.
He kept coming in and finding them in incompetent moments, and he kept rallying them together and getting the ship righted uh, as he was trying to bitch and moan and get away from it all.
I had never considered that before, but that is an interesting analogy, and I wonder if it was on purpose. When when the band forms, it's kind of similar to when he gets Ulver,
Hmm.
where you have this dysfunctional child, is basically the beginnings of the band, is this dysfunctional child, and he shows them how it's supposed to be, shows them how you're supposed to do it. He leads by example as much as he doesn't want to. And then when they separate, much like when the kid leaves the house, much like when the kids go off to do their own, or even before they leave the house, once like high school starts, they're busy being or trying to be young adults. So they're at school, they've got after school activities, they've got other friends, they're going out, they're not around you as much. But then when they come back, you've still got to say, you know what? You're doing all right, but we could do even better, which is basically what he does when he meets back up with the band in Knife of Dreams. And why I love, those scenes so much is Jordan didn't crap all over Tolmanes. It's just he's not Matt.
Hmm.
But he is still, there is a reason Matt left him in charge. And he made the band bigger and better than it was. And then Matt just said, you know what? We can do even better than that. Damn fine work, but we can do even better still.
Hmm.
And I had never thought of Matt in that parental role before, because even with Oliver, he's not very good at it and he doesn't really want it.
Hmm.
And that he kind of gets freaked out when he thinks it's, canoodling time with his new wife. And it's, no, you need to put an air in me. He's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Already?
Uh, yeah. I think somewhat of the Tuan story is a little unfortunate for him because
Yeah.
it becomes a lot of window dressing. And unfortunately, I think that was the plan from the beginning because up until that point, and the courtship was fun. That was fun. But up until that point, he had it. I thought this role of what we just talked about, where he was this form of masculinity that transcends our tropes on it.
Mm.
If you unless you really dig deep and think. When we dug real deep into him and thought, it was like, oh no, he would come to rescue somebody he didn't know. Oh, you know what? He always did the job, even though he bitched and moaned. Yeah, he liked to mess around, but he was always steady. And so maybe that was meant to be the culmination of it, that he found the rigid wife. But at the same time, I think you could have just kept going with the same thing and been satisfied.
Well, that's an interesting point too, because we've talked, especially you've talked about the boys as three legs of a stool. I think RJ uses that analogy when the Dark Ones are trying to take out one of the two boys and you weaken the dragon. Take
Hmm.
out one or both of his friends and you weaken him. You've got Perrin, who is the archetypal stoic strongman, masculinity, and then you have Rand, who is the charismatic leader, but then you also see in that, when he starts to go off the rails, how that can become toxic. when he
Well,
becomes
I
authoritarian.
think with but Perrin and Matt, and you can finish with your description of Matt because this is where you're going. I think you should have ended with Rand because Rand is the embodiment of how it could go wrong. And what we had for a long time in the series was how Perrin and Matt lifted him up because they were in the embodiments of how it went right.
Well, no, the reason I was going to finish with Matt is because you prompted this thought of how he is breaking the tropes of masculinity, because he takes elements of both of those, but then Jeet Kundos them,
Mm,
makes them his own. He is strong. He is one of one of the nerdy debates in the Wheel of Time community forever was who's the best warrior. Take away power, take away the one power, and who's the best warrior. And a lot of people say Matt, and they make very good points from what he does through the series. Is he is strong, not just physically, but when it comes to the skill of fighting, he's very strong. He's clearly a leader. He leads in a very different way than Rand, though.
mhm.
Um, he's clearly good with the ladies, just in a very different way from Rand and Perrin, right? So he takes parts of these and then just kind of turns the trope on its head a little bit without making it toxic.
Mhm.
He's just he's not warping
Okay,
the idea
so
of masculinity. He's just doing it differently.
let's take the moment that a lot of people in that argument used to say he might have been the best was when he kills Culloden,
Mm-hmm.
which was masterfully written because you never were there.
Yeah.
You were just getting a memory of a memory from him. Toxic masculinity would have been, I'm the best, I'm gonna go find the best, and I'm gonna take
Mm-hmm.
them out. I'm gonna be the hero on the
What
battlefield.
was Rand trying to do? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but he did it because he was just doing the right thing, and doing the right thing in that moment happened to be fighting probably the best fighter on the opposing team
Mm-hmm.
and winning.
Big time. Yeah. It's interesting the strange track we ended up on here with the Wheel of
I
Time
think it's still
comparison.
fitting because we're talking about positive and negative versions of
Mm-hmm.
this thing, the duality of it.
But
Maybe we can get back to how modern writing is different than that
not yet though,
90s
because
sitcom.
I have another interesting thought here. Because when you sent me that clip and said, "Hey, I want to open with this," and because we're going to keep talking about masculinity, and as the title of that short was, 90s dads were just different. And I was trying, and so dads, I was trying to think, one of our biggest gripes about the show was what they did to poor Abel Cawthon. Um, and
Mm.
it got me to thinking.
For those that haven't watched the show compared to the books,
Yeah.
they made him a drunk philanderer
Yep.
instead of the
Yep.
stand-up village councilman that he was in the books.
Yep. I mean, he's a little bit roguish, not to the degree of Matt, but you could definitely see where Matt gets it. But he's
Well, he was
still,
a
as you say,
salesman.
a
Remember,
stand-up man.
he was a horse trader.
That's a good
So
point. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He's got the gift of gab, and he's doing his salesman thing. But so I was trying to think, is there anyone who had a terrible father and ended up okay and ended up a good person?
I mean, I don't
And
know if
and
I
I
know
was trying to
anyone.
think, and I couldn't think of an example, and then it dawned on me, because I was thinking, guys, because we were talking about, again, the point of proper masculinity, the point of being a dad is so that your children, especially your sons, will know how to do it when it's their turn. And then I realized, actually, no, there is a very glaring example of someone with terrible parentage who actually turned out all right. And you made me think of it again. It's of insert it here because you brought up Matt. Tawan. My gosh, the family she comes from is awful.
Mm.
And yet, much like we talked about with contrasting Galad and Gawain never really knows who he is, never figures himself out, and so he ends up a tragedy. Galad goes down a road where I really thought he was going to be a villain. When you learn that he's been talking to the White Cloaks and then he joins the White Cloaks, you think, oh, this is going to be one of those brother versus brother tragedies. Godwin, I my recollection of when I read that for the first time is I assumed Galwin and Gallad were going to fight down the road. They were going to have to because Elaine is part of the tower. Egwene is part of the tower, who Galwin clearly has the hots for. He's going to have to fight his own brother down the road.
Hmm.
I thought that's what RJ was setting up, which would be back to tropes. That would be kind of the trope. And yet, as we said last time, because Gallad has that strong core, rather than being corrupted by the White Cloaks, he reforms them.
Hmm.
Likewise, you don't see it yet, but you can see how down the road, thanks in large part to Matt, rather than being corrupted by the Sanshin, Tawan is a true believer in the ideals of what the Sanshin are supposed to stand for. So you can see how it'll probably be a rocky road, but you can see how down the line in the next age, she would end up making a lot of positive changes in their culture, society, law, politics.
Hmm. Well,
And
especially with men around as well
yeah,
as
I'd forgotten that
in
too,
that
because
advisory role,
she's
because
kind of
men
stuck
and
there.
Matt
Yeah,
were the parallel characters,
that's a good point.
and that I think that's why Min's my favorite female character and Matt's my favorite male character is because they
Mhm.
both had that roguish do-goodery about them.
Yeah,
They were chaotic good, you know.
yeah. And I don't know that we really ever know much about Tuan's father, but for sure her mother is Freud's overbearing mother on steroids. I mean, she's an empress of, you know, basically two continents. Because if you look at the world map, the Sanchin landmass is basically North and South America. So it's a big effing empire. She's in charge. It's a terrifying empire, in its Byzantine Machiavellian, backstabbing, and she's the one in charge of that. She's the one encouraging it. She wants her children to go at each other so that only the strongest survives and rises to the top. And Tawan is able to live through that without being corrupted by it. So even though there's still some things that she says and does where you look at her and go, ugh, that's not
Well,
cool.
no,
But
I think there's a deeper message there too, whether it was on purpose or not, that is actually good news for this conversation. Because say you're a young man that has been a victim of circumstance and you have problems because of it. Tuan was corrupted by it.
mm, that's yeah.
And then Matt first, but Matt and then Min came in her life, and it caused a moment of revelation, I would say. And it shows that it's not too late, even though she was an adult already. It's not too late
Mhm.
to work on yourself. We did this in our attachment episode where we were talking about oh, we did it in the why the wife holds off on sex episode,
Mhm.
where there was the difference between just going from one way to another to at least giving your partner that you're working on it. If you're giving your partner that you're working on it, then there's hope down the road. And if you're the partner of that person and they still have problems, well, you set your boundary of what you'll tolerate, but at the same time, give them a little space to work on it as long as they are working on it. And so if you have a problem based on your childhood, say you were abused, and we might go into porn as an addiction or coping mechanism later, or alcohol or whatever. Say you have a problem from it. If you understand the root cause of that problem, then you can be working on it. And so that's the light at the end of that tunnel, because I would disagree that she was not corrupted. I say she was corrupted. She was a very bad person, very many times, especially in the early days of their interactions. But she found an influence and a motivation all of a sudden to work on it. And then I think she ends up where you were talking about.
I would say she does bad things, but I don't think she was a bad person. As an analogy, the car had a lot of body damage and it needed a new paint job, but the chassis and engine were still in good shape. So
Well, I think that's a requirement for the ability to work on it.
yes,
Maybe if you're born with no prefrontal lobe with lesions in your prefrontal lobes and you can't feel empathy and then you're abused as a child, maybe you're done. We don't know yet. We haven't gotten that far with modern medicine. Maybe Ted Bundy was done from the beginning.
mm.
He might have been, right? But we don't know that yet, and that's what we should be working on in the prison system, but that's a side note.
Well, speaking of
There are people without the chassis. But you
one of
could
the
still be a
gym
bad person and have a good chassis underneath if you never get the environmental factors that help you be good.
one of the gym bros I talk to sometimes at the gym, and hey, how you doing? What you working on? You know, blah blah blah. And he's mentioned that to me is that he was incarcerated. I haven't pried, so I have no idea why. I don't care, but he was incarcerated. Not you know he was in prison for a while, and he's talked about how uh much like who what was the old man character in Shawshank Redemption? I'm brain farting on him.
Oh,
The old man who had the pet bird that he would feed, and he can't make it on the outside. Is he doesn't know how to live
hmm.
because he's been in prison so long. And this guy's talked about, that was his real struggle once he got out, is in a lot of ways, as he put it, in a lot of ways, prison is easy. You got a schedule. You got three meal times and you know when they are. You got lights out and you know when it is. You know when your rec time is. You know when your study time is. You are told what to do and when to do it. And now you get out here and you've got to figure it out.
Yeah. What do you think
And
one of the
on
big
top of
problems of
that,
getting out of the military is? Because it's the
yeah,
same. It's the same.
but at least for the military guys, that looks good on your resume.
Well,
As
there is that. Yeah.
I mean that is something that we've talked about, because I'd mentioned to him before, because one of the reason it came up is because I told him I was doing the paralegal program when he asked why I wasn't training anymore, because I'd asked him, because he's a well-built guy, he knows what he's doing in the gym, and I asked him if he was a trainer because he kind of looked like one and acted like one, and he said, no, I learned how to work out in prison. I was like, oh, okay. And I told him I was going through the paralegal program and thinking about law school, and he told me going to criminal law, that's where the money is. But this is where that came up, is because I told him, look, you can't pass the bar with a felony record, but there's nothing that keeps you from being a paralegal if you want to go do that program. Um, and he said he'd think about it because it's so freaking hard to get a job with a felony record.
Hmm.
And that just compounds that feeling of, why bother?
Hmm. Well, I
Maybe
mean,
I should
the
just go
stuff we're
back in.
doing to try to send trainers to homes, that's a disqualifier because I'm not going to send a former
Yeah.
felon to
Yeah.
someone's home. I don't even think our insurance would allow it.
Yeah. As much as I may think you're a good person, and I may, think you're fully reformed, I can't take the risk.
Mhm.
There's
Well, yeah.
just there are going to be a lot of people like that. And I bring this up to your point of, you've got to want to change, you've got to be able to change, but then you've also got to recognize it ain't going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of just life sucks, and then the occasional purposeful, you know, uh, crap. I just brain farted on her because I keep wanting to say Suroth, and it's not Suroth. That's the um, who's the psycho Forsaken, the
Oh,
masochistic
Semirage.
Cimaraj. Yeah, she's whispering into Juan's ear, literally whispering into Juan's ear of, no, you need to do it like this. You need to do that. This is what you should be doing. And that is not a positive influence. You know, one of the reasons she is able to change, besides the fact that she's got, that core that is worthwhile, is she is literally removed from that toxic situation by her man, caveman style, thrown over his arm and carried away.
Yeah.
You know, is it because she has to be, is I've got to get you out of this toxic situation. And in a story, it's because,
Because he didn't
the
want to get caught.
the commoner kidnaps the princess,
Yeah.
and they fall in love. I'm using air quotes here because Matt kind of is, and Tawan is like, maybe I will be one day. but but in real life, you're going to have to find a way to, whether it's you or a friend. Okay, how do I remove as many negative influences as possible? Because real life is just going to throw up occasional negativity just cause,
Hmm.
just through entropy and chaos. So what can you do? And this may be a good point to bring up why you mentioned porn and porn addiction, as you were listening to someone talk about this. And this is one of those things of, if you are trying to put yourself out there, if you're in a relationship and trying to make a better relationship, or trying to get into a worthwhile relationship, spending your time spanking it is not going to help you.
Well, you're spending your time uh, without. Okay, so I'm going to just say what she said, and it'll make more sense. So this was Dr. Deborah So on Modern Wisdom, and he brought up what about porn as an addiction to her, because she's an expert in paraphilias, which are unusual sex preferences, right? And she said, no, I actually think of it as more of a coping mechanism for anxiety and procrastination. And that hit me right in the side of the head, because I think about the times I do partake and I'm like, God, it is a moment of procrastination and anxiety about the procrastination. I'm like distracting myself from the thing I should be doing and the anxiety that's involved with doing the thing. And I was like, yeah, that hits home. And we had an episode on addiction and talked about the differences between chemical addiction and psychological addiction. But I think both can be true at once.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can do it as a coping mechanism for those things, but then the dopamine hit you get from it
Yeah.
kind of makes the process a snowball down the hill until you're at a point where it's hard to get away from it, even if you don't have the other things. Now, what you we talked about before we got on air was you said, what did you say? You said it was something.
Well, because you said it's kind of a distinction without a difference, and my thinking was, in effect,
Hmm.
yes, it's a distinction without a difference. But if you're looking at treatment, I would think you would need, just generally speaking, if you're trying to treat some kind of psychological malady, it helps to know why. That's the whole
Hmm.
point of did Freud start psychoanalysis? Is that one of the things he's
Yeah,
credited with?
that is his thing. Yeah.
And the point was, let's find the root cause. What was the trigger for this psychological abnormality? This character flaw, or this thing you do, or whatever. What was the trigger? What was the inciting incident? Now correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like one of the things where Freud doesn't hold up, because it is grown and evolved, is the idea that there is an incident that
Mm.
triggers something, rather than a series of events.
Having read a lot of his work on psychoanalytic theory, I think that's a modern misinterpretation of his
Okay.
work. But I mean, maybe he did say it a few times, but the key is that past trauma can determine behaviors now.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it holds up. It holds up. Your attachment style to your parent affects your relationships in the future. It holds up. But and I do accept your point that we do need to get to the original trauma. The problem is there's the counterpoint of We need to take the coping mechanism out of the way.
Yeah.
Because if you're numbing yourself with alcohol, for instance, you're never ever going to be able to get in that position of dealing with that pain from the past events because you're always numb. I mean, that's why I did it because it was better than the anxiety of life. And
Well,
when, so,
the opioid epidemic, the opioid, the addictions started from legitimate chronic pain, and doctors saying, "Oh, pain is a." They started asking you, "Are you in pain?" And it's like you
which
shouldn't
is
be in
which is the
pain.
original affirmative care, by the way.
And they said, "Okay, here's some opioids, so you are no longer in pain." Well, the pain was real. Problem was regular doses of opioids take away one kind of pain and create other kinds of pain,
Hmm.
which I think you could say about any addiction
Hmm.
is you're replacing one kind of pain for something that feels good now, but down the road is going to create an entirely new kind of pain.
I don't know why she swallowed the fly. Perhaps she'll die.
Yeah,
It's almost like those stories had meanings or something.
almost like. Um, it is interesting that Dr. So pointed to anxiety and procrastination because my initial thought would be that um, a coping mechanism is going to be more directly tied to what it's countering.
Hmm.
Um, if it last week we talked about uh, a particular kind of body dysmorphia. Okay, well, if you are a scrawny teenage kid who desperately wants to be noticed by members of the opposite sex and have your fellow dudes think you're an awesome bro, yeah, you might become obsessed with exercise, musculature, your appearance, all of these things, so much so that it creates a kind of body dysmorphia. Okay, so that coping mechanism. You are coping with this insecurity. So my first thought assumption would be that porn as a coping mechanism is filling a void of wanting real connection, wanting real sex, and not being able to get it. So I'm curious that her initial, and again, she is the expert on these things. So I would like, did she unpack that more in that episode?
It was a clip, so
Okay.
I'll have to watch the full version. Sorry, wrong pipe.
Yeah. So I'm curious to go watch the full version or listen to it now, to see if she unpacks that more of why those things in particular with that, or if perhaps it's simply because procrastination and anxiety are so prevalent in so many people and
Mm.
porn is so easily accessible now.
Yeah. And one of her points she did bring was that because it mimics something we crave, it
Mm.
makes for an easy distraction. So you're getting something from the distraction because your brain is firing like you're kind of having it, but you have zero risk. Your time is your own, and you don't then and now you don't have to, and it's such a hard desire in our brain that it is actually enough to cope with the anxiety and the depression,
Mm.
or the anxiety and procrastination that you're dealing with. It's enough of a motivation to do that, whereas other tasks aren't, like cleaning, like doing the laundry or something.
That makes a lot of sense. And the first thing that popped into my head was a movie that I've been wanting to watch, because I like Brendan Fraser and I've heard it's good, is The Whale,
Oh yeah, I've
um,
heard that was really
which
good. Yeah.
is based on a play, and it's essentially this guy who's not a very good person, and that was one of the um, positives I heard from the Drinker loved it, and in large part because even though he even though you can sympathize with the character, you also recognize this isn't a very good guy. He's got a lot of problems. And he's only compounding his problems through his coping mechanism, which is he is morbidly obese and he can't stop eating.
Which is
He,
another need we have.
yeah,
Yes.
which that was exactly why I thought of it is sex is a strong biological need, especially for guys. Well, so is food. Food is a need. That's as you say, the Oreos were scientifically calculated to have the proper the perfect amount of fat, sugar, and salt to make your brain go, "Ooh, I need that." Not
Yep.
want it, I need that. And because that that is why animals will endure 100 bee stings to go gorge on some honey because that's a lot of calories,
Hmm.
right? And so
Yeah,
that
you
does
said
make
sugar.
sense.
You said sugar, and actually, we do need to specify that from a nutrition standpoint, it was calories.
Mm.
Calories, sugar, calories, salt, and fat. And sugar spikes your brain with that hit of you're getting a lot of calories. This is great for you because it's such a fast mechanism for it since we've crystallized it. Just like cocaine is a fast mechanism for a plant we used to chew, our ancestors used to chew
Mm.
on just to have a little bit more energy. So yeah, it's a crystallized version of a signal that we're getting a lot of calories.
Well, I had another thought uh, as we kind of wrap up here, and
Yeah, because I want to end bringing it back to culture. So
I want to I like to pose a question. I'm curious what other people think and what you think, and and hopefully we can end on a positive note. But I'm not sure. One of the things that Roseanne clip made me think of is for a very long time, people like Charles Murray, who we've talked about before, and others have pointed out the innumerable amounts of data that show that the number one predictor of bad outcomes, especially for boys into adulthood, is the lack of a father in the home. And that, barring serious abuse, that's always the caveat. You don't even have to be a good father. Just having a father in the house, you are going to end up better statistically. It's not even close. It's glaring. I'm wondering now if anyone has looked at more, has parsed out the historical data with more recent data, that I'm wondering if we have so neutered masculinity. I wonder if that still holds up.
okay, so
Because
what I'm getting from your statement, if I translate it, is that we've neutered masculinity so much that even a father in the house isn't a father in the house.
exactly. Because even if he was not a good father in the past, like again, one of our favorites because he's hilarious, Al Bundy. The way he snipes at his wife and his kids, that's not good parenting and husbanding, you know. But he's still out there at least trying to be a man. He is still being masculine to some degree, even if he's not
He's
doing it
doing the core
well.
protect provide.
Exactly. He's at
Yeah.
least doing the basics. And so my thinking was, you know, even a bad example is worthwhile because I don't want to be like that. And a good example is obviously good because, oh yeah, be like that, do that. It's crud. Who did I see say this? I was scrolling through X, seeing what's going on early this morning, and one of the sciencey guys I follow was talking about the corruption of science, and his point was that there is this obsession with getting a result, and a null result is actually
Hmm.
good if you have a properly constructed experiment,
Well, and
because that
that's
still
yeah,
tells you something.
that is one of the beefs, even with the I mean, it's one of the biggest problems with the replication crisis because there's a
Mm,
publication bias to getting a result versus a null hypothesis.
yep.
The experiment was still done, and the problem is you get information from a null result. You get that it didn't work.
Hmm.
And so it does two main things. And the corruption part is it incentivizes people to cheat to get a good result so they can get published. So they're forging data, or they're fudging their experiments to get a good result, as we talked about the ivermectin experiments. So they're doing a thing to get the positive result that is not 100% honest. And the other part of it is that's just good information to have if you're looking to do research, because you're not doubling up. Like, okay, so say I have a great idea. Someone else had that great idea, but it's not going to work. If I could search publications and say, oh, well, 10 authors got null hypothesis on what my idea was, I'm not going to waste my time on said idea unless I'm a true
Yeah.
believer in it. And if I'm a true believer in it, I'm probably going to fudge my data. And so now their stuff wasn't published, and mine gets published because I got a good result from fudging my data. And we could have had 10 examples for a meta-analysis to come in and say, hey, yeah, we had this one paper that got a good result, but we have 10 papers that didn't. What did they do different? Or maybe we should investigate this guy
Hmm.
who was the
I
10%.
mean,
The
there's a,
one dentist out of 10 that doesn't recommend
yeah.
that that toothpaste.
the Yeah, there's a heck of an analogy on our grand social experiment of saying, we have uh I've talked about before back in the 90s or the mid 90s. I don't brain farting on who wrote it, The End of History. Guy with an American Japanese guy, so he's got a Japanese name, and I'm just brain farting his name. The End of History. Basically, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, the cycles of history had been broken because Western liberal democracy had triumphed over Marxism. Boy, howdy, was that wrong. Well, we're doing that on an even grander, deeper scale with this social experiment of ending evolution. We have 300,000 years. What,
Well, go further back than that, because you don't
yeah.
even have to have purely Homo sapien evolution. You could have everything that led to Homo sapien. We're like
And we,
60% the same as fungi. It's
and for a few decades now, we have just been absolutely burning that to the ground and throwing it out. So,
thank you, social psychs.
exactly. And what is the result of that? And that is where this really dark negative thought came from of, you've been open about how you grew up. You grew up with a terrible abusive stepfather, but that was at least worthwhile in the
And an abandoned father.
and an abandoned biological father. And so you had examples of, well, I'm not going to be like that. But at least you had some positive examples too, because there
Yeah.
were enough. We had some crappy coaches, but we had some good coaches. We had some worthless teachers. We had some great teachers.
Hmm.
We've brought
I
up,
had my grandfather and my uncles,
yeah,
and then I had your
exactly.
dad, and then I had you.
And
It
so you had things to look to, positive and negative, and say, I know I don't want to be like that. Oh, I guess you know what? That's pretty good. Maybe I should go for that.
Mhm.
Well, we have been ripping all that down for a couple of decades now, and I worry that actually maybe having a great feminization theory again, having having an emasculated, not a bad, because at least that's an example you can follow. Having an emasculated father figure is worse than having no father figure.
Mm. Well, yes, I think partly it is a little bit cultural and a little bit evolutionary too, because the way we're emasculating men in media right now actually not only doesn't give you good examples, but it causes you to disrespect them.
Mm,
So we have no respect for those things. And then again, to go back to the beginning, this is super important. People don't know how the behaviorists are the reason why propaganda works. Okay. Yeah. There's arguments with them, just like there's arguments with Freud, and there's arguments with the social psychs and everything. There's arguments that can be made, but at the same time, we cannot deny that things like propaganda work, right?
clearly,
Otherwise,
yeah.
we wouldn't have engagement rings. Okay. That is, we've talked about that history. Go look up that episode, whatever it is. But I think it's called propaganda. But the this exists, and one of the keys is the four horsemen of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. And we have removed the positive reinforcement from masculinity and created punishment, both types of punishment for any kind of masculinity. And you are going to have Peter Pans all over the world. You're going to have grown boys. You're not going to have men. And realistically, it's one of those things that I think with the modern Western world, you don't see this in the East. You don't see this in fact, they celebrate it in China. You don't see this in Russia. You don't see this in Africa. You don't see this phenomenon because we're so comfortable. Put up comfort crisis, right? We are so comfortable that just like the alcohol covering the trauma, we have covered, it ain't gone away. We have covered and numbed our ability to see the usefulness of men and the masculine. And guess when it's going to hurt us? When it's finally needed. Or it's going to be like a cancer that grows until it's going to be one of those things that's happens slowly and then all of a sudden. You know who's benefiting from masculine men? The Ukraine, because their men are going to war and they're having a shortage of men right now because lots of them are dying, but the country's still standing against a much stronger opponent. That's on them. Yeah, we helped financially and stuff, but they are the ones doing the fighting and they're standing up to the much bigger opponent. They're the chicken hawk,
Mhm.
right? I mean, credit to them. I mean, opinions about the leader and everything aside, the men that are doing the fighting, man, good on you. I hope you get to go home soon, right? And in one piece. Uh, who's benefiting from masculinity in a Maasai tribe? The people who aren't getting raided by the other tribe, right? So that's we've been numb to that for so long because now we sit in air conditioning, we work from our laptops, we're on our laptop now. We don't have to, not many people have to lift heavy things, but when it gets to a saturation point of there aren't those men out there, your lines aren't going to be taken care of during a storm. You're not going to your construction's going to get slower and slower and slower on the freeway. And those are the comforts. Those are the where they get comfort. Now we have to go to war. Guess what? We're no longer a country because we didn't have the guys to do it.
Mhm.
One of my favorite things that's not good. So the little bit of dark humor had to wrap your mind around it is when all of these people were coming across the border and no one was stopping them, and these South American gang members were coming into town. There ended up being gang wars in Chicago between the original gangs and the new gangs that were coming in, and our gangbangers were getting their asses kicked. And I'm like, yeah, even our gangbangers aren't masculine enough anymore.
Well, there's a fun place to end it
Well,
on
no, I
a
I
cheery
think
note.
I can end it on a cheery note though.
Okay.
I think part of the solution is where we started with all this. Bring back the positive examples in the media we consume every day.
Yeah.
Not the Andrew Tates, not the Giga Chads, not, none of the red pill community. More Roseanne shows, more Tim Allen shows, more dads doing dad things in a dad
Yeah.
way without being, henpecked and uh and belittled the whole time.
I guess that is a good point. Now, I have heard this anecdotally, and I have seen some evidence of this. Like, for instance, I've heard people saying that Gen Z isn't even listening to their own music. They're listening to music from a couple decades ago. Of
I saw that
uh,
in the gym 10 years ago when all the high school baseball kids wanted to listen to classic rock.
uh, Paramount Plus, they credit where it's due. They don't hide their what's trending so much, but the latest Star Trek show is just so abysmal. It's just so terribly modern, and it's live right now, and it's not on their top 10. and there are like three Taylor Sheridan shows that are in their top 10, all of which are done. Like Landman and Tulsa King and
I
one of the
really liked Tulsa
Yellowstones.
King.
Those are all in their top 10, not the thing that's actually live right now, coming out week to week right now. People aren't watching the crap. You'll even see that in Netflix when Netflix gets a licensing deal for like an 80s or a 90s show, like for Friends, or heck, not even 90s, Suits. When they got Suits, that was a big deal, and that was trending for a month or two.
Mhm.
Is that's what people were watching. So I guess there is some hope in that, is that people are actually, it's just going to take a while for the Titanic to turn, and hopefully this time it doesn't actually hit the iceberg and sink, but it's able to actually, dodge it. We'll see.
Yeah, well, there is an underlying craving for that kind of storytelling, for the hero's journey, for you know as we talked about masculinity, but also positive femininity too. There's a
Mm.
craving for it, which She-Hulk was not an example of that.
Ugh.
She
Yeah.
was as soon as she had superpowers, she became an abuser.
Yeah.
And it was everybody was going, "Oh, girl power." I'm like, "That's not girl power. That's manpower in a girl." And people didn't respond well because that's not what we're craving deep down
Mm-hmm.
inside. We want Nynaeve. We want not Connor because that's Terminator. Ridley, Ripley, Ripley from Alien, as we always bring her up as the shining example.
Mm-hmm.
We want that female strong energy. We want, what a good show that had some things right but some things wrong is that Modern Family show.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Al Bundy, I'm blanking on his real name, and his wife in that show, their relationship was kind of like what we would see in an old sitcom, where he would do manly things and she's talking about how hot he is when he's doing it, and then she would do things that made him go crazy over her, and she was feminine and he was masculine. So that show actually kind of got it right, right? So and
Mm-hmm.
we're craving that, and that's why that show was so popular.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping. All
Here's,
right. Well, we will.
I think the demand will push it again because I think a lot of people got tired of the other stuff, and it's just that I'm wondering who said it. Can't remember if it was Critical Drinker or Clifton Duncan that he was in a longer form interview, and he was saying Hollywood is X many years behind what the people actually want. And he said, I think we're at that point where we'll start seeing the shift, but it's still going to take a few years.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think with your example of people are watching old shows instead of the new ones, that's the evidence of the craving. And maybe next episode we'll sit down separately and look for modern shows that are coming out that are examples of where they might be coming back to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've got a good one that's got both positive and toxic femininity and masculinity, which I told you to watch, which is the Iron Claw, which
Okay, yeah, I started
I
it, but it was late at night, so I
I
didn't.
can count on one hand the number of movies that I have watched in the last few years that I thought, you know what, that met or even exceeded the hype around it. And that was one of them. Is it's on Netflix now here in the US, and I thought, you know what, a lot of people I follow really liked this and said it was good. Let me give it a watch. It was darn good. It was
Okay,
darn good.
I'll do my homework and I'll finish it before we're back on.
All right, well, so we'll talk some more about these kinds of things and bring in some of the toxic femininity and examples of that as well.
All right, it's like, subscribe, do all those things. If you've listened this far, you probably already subscribed, but if you haven't, do it. And we hit over 100
Ooh,
subscribers now, so
big time.
these things do grow exponentially. So share us so we can get to 500, do lives. we're not doing this for the money, but it kind of would be nice because we're actually going to be doing it less now because we are doing other business stuff for money. But the more we can balance that, the better. So we promise we'll never grift, never hit audience capture. And in fact, we'll keep each other in check on that because it's a lot easier for two people to keep that from happening. But yeah, do it so we can keep going, and we'll probably be once a week from here on out. But if that changes for reasons, then we'll keep you posted.
All right, we'll see y'all then.
Later.